So this would be like the furnace setup. So I actually like this idea because I can have all my stuff already in place. And when it's time for me to bench test the furnace, which typically I always do, and I'm having furnace issues, I remove the furnace from the unit and I bench test it. Um, and that's just what I do. Now this furnace is it's a few years old. It's 3 or 4 years old, and the customer never maintenance it. So, you know, it needs burner assembly. The igniter wire was had a short circuit in it. It had rubbed on something and it was grounding out. It had basically the sheathing had rubbed off a part of the igniter cable. So you're talking about another igniter, a burner assembly, and let's talk about what was wrong with it, why this furnace wasn't working. So this is I call it weird. I just think it's dumb. In this day and age, for furnaces still to use this, but it has the control board is in two pieces. You got the igniter board part that goes over here. Okay, there's your edge connector, and then but it doesn't have any blower motor controls on it. So all that's over here. So when the customer says, if you run into this type of furnace, there's a schematic for it, right? Always look at that. That'll help you out, especially if you're unfamiliar with it. So I'm gonna try to slide this back. So the way this is wired, and I have removed all the wires. This is the board that goes out. If the customer complaint is, and you need to be pulling this out and bench testing it like I do, because it's just the way to do it. But let's look and see what's all on this board. You got a ground, you got thermostat, you got fan, and you got power. All right. So your main power and your thermostat comes into this board with this relay. Your fan, which is a blower fan, which connects through the motor to the combustion fan, all of that is controlled by this board. This board over here is just the igniter and it's just really ignition board. It's really just an ignition board because the thermostat is over here. Now on this system, they're only using one blue wire. Like they didn't have this set up to where you touch two blue wires together and the thing comes on, which is like in most cases. So this didn't have a feedback coming like a Dometic. It didn't have a feedback coming from the air conditioner. When they're only using one blue wire, that's because it's not a Dometic system. It doesn't have the feedback that's only, that's coming back to the other blue wire. It doesn't have that. So how this one works is, you got power, you check your power is good. You're not going to have any power to this board because the power for this board, since this is just an igniter board, has to come through this system. And the way it works is main power comes in here, thermostat power comes in here. You hit your little Coleman thermostat, it sends 12 volts down the thermostat wire. That wire, which is a blue wire, hits that thermostat prong, and it has to work its way through this little circuit board and tells the fan to come on. The rest of the power is routed through the cell switch, and then it goes over to this switch. Then it goes to this board through this edge connector. So if your fan isn't working, you're not going to have power to your main board. If the fan never turns on, you're not going to have power to anything else. So the problem is this little board, okay? the relay is stuck open or whatever, the board has failed in some way, and it's never, even though it's getting the thermostat signal, the 12 volts, and you have your 12 volts and you have your ground, it never sends power to the fan. All right. Now you could test the fan to see if your see, this is the fan wire right here, and you could test the fan, and it looks like, looking at these splices, because the customer was working on this before I got here, or she had her son working on it, whatever. He tried to figure it out, he couldn't figure it out, but that's what it is. You know, in order for this board, he thought it was this board. He thought this board was bad. This board is fine. This board is bad because this is the beginning of the circuit. The power starts here and it leaves here. And when it leaves here, it leaves here. It had a piggyback connector, so the cell switch was piggybacked on to the power. So when the fan turns on, the cell switch closes, completing a circuit that routes power back through this circuit, through this switch, and to the board, which turns on the igniter. The ignition sequence starts, and the igniter board controls whether it's getting flame sense and all of that to, you know, turn that on and off. But that's basically how this is set up. A modern day furnace has all of that on one board, and it eliminates that. It eliminates that issue, right? So for me to fix that, I would convert that over to a normal system, and I would use I use dinosaur boards, and this one board costs more. It's twice as much as that whole thing right there, which is why I ordered that thing. These are about $200. They're made in the USA. They got 3-year warranty. All right. So that's why I use it. So this is your dinosaur board, and a lot of other manufacturers, like that Suburban furnace. And you buy a new Suburban furnace, it has a board like this on it. It's not a dinosaur board, but it has a board like this on it. Everything's on the board. It's like, that's like an old way of doing it. So when you get a new furnace, like this is a new furnace, that board has fan controls on it. The fan and everything, as you can see, it goes to that board. It's simple. But why she has a furnace in a, why they put that in? It's just, I guess it's cheaper, man. I don't know. Maybe it's just a old stock that they had, but you buy a Suburban furnace today, FQ series, it's not gonna have this crap on it. All right, it's gonna have a normal board like this. So, like I said, this board is like $200. That thing was $80. So, and this thing's never been maintenance before. So to fix this furnace would cost almost the price of what I can get a new furnace for. You know, I can get the whole furnace with everything, board and all. I can get that whole furnace for like $500. So, I mean, why would I want to put $300 in parts in this one? I wouldn't, and I don't recommend my customers to do it either. So what I do is I stock these cores for the Suburban furnaces, and when it gets to the point where, you know, the person's had the camper for, you know, 3 to 10 years, they've never maintenance it, and they need an annual inspection, and you know what that costs, and to clean it all out. When you put in the labor, they've paid more for you to service this old furnace than it would take for you to give them a new furnace. So just give them a new furnace. I think it's more ethical, and I think it's a better deal for the customer. Even if it costs them slightly more to get that, it's still worth it, especially when it's only, you know, $50 to $100 price difference in you fixing this old furnace that will probably have problems again, and you giving them a new furnace with a warranty, you know, from the manufacturer. So that's what I do. You can't always do it like that. Everybody doesn't sell cores. You know, Suburban does it, Dometic doesn't. So, you know, if you got a Dometic, there's, you know, they're paying you the $500 to fix the old one. If they got a Suburban, they're paying you the $500, and hopefully you'll give them a new one. So. Okay, guys, we've made it out here around Shaw Air Force Base, and this is the patient right here. And rat, mice, whatever you want to call it, damage. And got a Ryobi table lifted up. And we got our parts. The customer ordered. Our blower wheel and our control board, and I'll show you why we needed both. Okay, so the reason we have both is because the rats have been chewing on the components on the board, that big capacitor there. And we knew this, you have to, it's in a tough spot in the unit, it's in the basement, it's tough to get to. The only thing you have on the outside is the exhaust tube. So that's why I had the customer go ahead and order the board as well as the blower wheel. So let's get the blower wheel is missing teeth. So this furnace will run, but it makes an awful racket because the wheel is out of balance because the teeth are missing. So if you run into one and it's making an awful racket, it's because either the rat is still in there, dirt dauberness on the wheel, or something that's causing that to be off balance. You know, you should be taking them out anyway and bench testing them, and you find all stuff out. So, but that's just a quick way by ear you can kind of diagnose this. So now let's get magnet tray. I'm gonna get this one because we're gonna have several different fasteners. And we'll get our tools out. We're gonna need a lot of Phillips stuff. And having my table set up here, I actually have more space because my shelf is right there. Like right now. Okay. And then we're gonna get our Milwaukee set of bits out here with all the different sizes. And I'll probably even get some hand screwdrivers from off the, because I think this has a couple of the small little screws. So I might even end up grabbing, and that's why this is really convenient to have a set of drivers here and a set of sockets. I pull from these all the time while I'm doing bench work like this. Either I'm using this a lot of times, or even when I got to do this. So let me start by getting this set up to be taken apart. Okay, so first we're going to work with the control board. I just took away the connector there, and you can see that it has these little plastic clips instead of screws or anything like that. So we have our Icon snap-on clones, and we're going to use those to pinch these while we simultaneously lift up on the board with a pry bar. So it's going to take two hands. Maybe I'll get a mount for the camera and I'll have like an overhead thing. I'll work on that, man, doing the bench work. You can see where the rats, I pulled a lot of that out the last time I was here. They made their nest in here. Now there's a small screw in the back, if you follow my driver, and it's holding this little plastic plate down because you may not be able to get to the last snap. So what you'll do is you'll remove the entire assembly like that, and then it's a lot easier to work with the plate. This one's filthy. It's covered in rat turds and excrement. There's a screw. And there's our first one. And now you can pinch that last clamp off while you have it out. Now that the control board is free, go ahead and remove your connections. You got your power, your fan, blower wire, and then your igniter wire. They're slightly different colors, but if you can't remember, you can always follow the wire back to where it goes and determine if it's the blower or the power. But the power wire is the bright red one, which is not as heavy a gauge as the blower motor one, okay? And just like that, our board is free. And we'll start working on these little small screws to get to the fan. Go ahead and have your magnet tool out because you're going to drop some of these screws. I'm in a bit of a controlled environment, so that's good for me. And you want to kind of do this in an area to where if you drop something, you can find it. So we're working on the screws on the clamshell. So take this off. This cover has a couple visible screws up top, but there's a couple hidden screws along the side, okay? Now, this whole assembly, the motor has this fan and this fan on it, so you kind of got to take all the stuff off. So I'll be working on all these screws so that I can pull this clamshell apart. You can see it splits in the middle. So we're removing the top half. Some of the screws are on the back. You see? Right there, right there. So this look around. Everything should come out easy. Don't force anything. And let's get it out. All right, guys, so now we're at the point to where we've removed our screws and we've organized them. If you don't have one of these Blue Point trays, go on to Snap One and buy one. This is great for doing assembly with a lot of different parts. As you can see how I have this organized, and they're big enough to hold some of your tools too. The tools don't have to be in there though. But some places you're working on something and it's in weird spots. So it's nice to, if you have room, you can use one for your tools. I want all the stuff that came apart together to stay together because a lot of these fasteners are different sizes. And the ones that go to particular things, I want them to go back. These are exterior screws that went to these plates that holds this in. You see the holes right there? It holds that part of that plate in on two different sides. So these are longer, heavier screws, and they go around the motor. Okay, so now what's holding it is the wiring. So you want to go ahead and take a picture and then remove them. So you got your blue and your red on this side. I like to put the stuff back the same way that I got it. And then, and look at this, guys. Got the cell switch on the combustion wheel. Normally you see it over here on the blower wheel, but they got the cell switch on the combustion wheel. So that's interesting. So let me take my wires apart. A lot of them are gonna have, you know, connectors because they know you gotta get in here and do this. You're gonna have to take a lot of these wires off. So down there at the limit switch, because this is all gonna come up together, so you'll pull the wires from down here. Now, those wires don't matter. It's just a limit switch. It's just making a circuit. Either it's gonna go through or it's not. And I like to use these pliers to get a good grip to not tear up things. So I'm going to be removing these two. I'm going to be removing, let's see, this ignition wire. That's going to be in the way. So I'm going to have to get this out of the zip tie, the ignition wire, and bring it over the power switch. And then I should be able to lift this up with without messing with more stuff than I have to. Okay, we got a couple more hang-ups. I feel it tight, so I stop and look, and there's our case ground. We had, instead of taking all of these grounds, which are bolted right here, is take the screw off, but we need to remove the case ground right there. Now our harness is free. Now on this side, to keep from going way down there and taking that off, we're gonna leave that. I just pulled a lot of slack through so that I can drape this over. So now what's holding us up is we got the ground for the motor, and the power is already free. So we'll have to take this one off for the motor, and then we should be able to take it off. Now that that's free, we just routed the wires through. We'll have to route them back up the same way. We can get a much closer look at our problem here. And that's just draping off the side because we didn't want to mess with the ignition wire because it's down there, and I didn't want to really mess with trying to get it back connected. It's kind of, you would have to remove the igniter. So we don't want to do that. We want to make time and save time. So as you can see, the fan is badly damaged. Part of the ring that holds all the fins together and some of the fins themselves are missing. So what happened when the rat go in there, he got his head knocked off and took some of your furnace along with him. And that shaft in this motor, it goes all the way through and hits this side, which is the combustion wheel, which is fine. Okay. I'll move this over. Inside the case, you see that that's what the sail switch looks like on this one, and it's made for the combustion side, which is different than what you would typically see. You would typically see that on the blower wheel side. Okay. Now we should be able to lift this whole thing out, and there we have it. Set it to the side. It has a pin, kind of like on a seat for a leaf spring, that lets you locate it. So we're gonna set that there, and then we're gonna move our furnace over to the ground and get the stress off of the wire and move this. Let's move it over here out of the way. Clean that out. But this is what we're working on, changing this wheel. And of course the control board will go in after we start reassembly. We're gonna flip this over so we can see this side. Let's get our new part. It should be over here. Yeah. Okay, as you can see, it comes with a new clamp. Okay. So we're just gonna take our icons, and we're just going to reach in there and pull this guy off. And then we're gonna work this blower wheel off. It might be stuck on there for, it's been on there for a while. So let me use two hands and get it off. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing the base of the motor while I pull on the blower wheel assembly, and that's how I'm getting it off. So when I take that off, I'm keeping this orientation. And I'm sitting this, I pulled that off and sat it right here so that I don't put the new wheel on backwards. See, my new wheel is sitting like this, but really it needs to be this way with the nipple pointing up. See if this one's keyed. Yeah. So this shaft has a flat side, so you can't slide it on wrong, but you can have it on with the nipple facing down, and that's not good. So we're gonna put this on here and slide it around. Now if you have to, you give it a little bit of lubricant. It's not gonna hurt anything. Just a little bit to help it slide on there. We'll drop. I'm really loving this mobile shop setup, guys. This is a lot nicer. I've taken off my jacket because it's super warm in here. We'll do a temperature check in a minute. And that went on nice and easy. Pushing it all the way down to make sure it's fully seated. So pushing down on that pretty hard. Now that I know it's seated, I'm gonna take my new clamp. They stretch over time. And so this is our new clamp. There's an old clamp. You can see the old clamp is bigger because it stretches. So go ahead and use your new clamp and put this back on here. Get our parallel pliers. Slide that on. And that's it. Okay. Let's take a look. Okay. Now we're ready to reinstall. So we'll get our furnace back down and put this back in. And then we'll bench test it. Very important to do that. These pieces are just trash. That's what the bucket's for. Little rat turds and crap. Yep. And we'll test our fitment inside of our furnace. If it's not lining up right, you may have to raise the blower wheel on the shaft a little bit. Now that we have this placed in place, that locator pin really helps out a lot. They didn't always used to have that, and they all don't have that. And you can have this thing up a little bit, back a little bit, but by keying the shaft to the point where they want it to stop and having that locator pin, it kind of makes it to where it's always in the right spot. Now, I like to spin it to hear if it's hitting. And if it is, I like to know before I get it all put back together. Okay. Take my flashlight. Okay. I hear a little drag, but that's coming from those two studs that they have on the combustion wheel side, and that was already like that. If it gets out of too far out of whack, it won't be able to because it'll hit those studs. Okay. Let's put it back together, and then I'll put a 12-volt battery on this and spin it, but I want to put the case on it so that it can hold the motor. You see it has that little piece of white stuff in there. It's gonna kind of hold this thing stable, and then I'll test it by putting power to my motor. I want to hear how it sounds before I put it all back together. Okay, we got a couple screws in. Let's take a listen. Blower wheel sounds really good, but we got some drag on the combustion wheel. So what could have happened is while I was pushing down, I might have moved the combustion wheel a little bit. So let's take it back out and adjust it. So I took it out, and while gripping the motor with my hand and putting slight pressure, I used my pliers to loosen the clamp, and I pushed it up a bit. And then I went back down until I could see a gap. I don't want it touching. Now let's see if we have our proper clearance once it's in here, because we don't want it touching the sides either. Okay, so like I said, this has a little locator beacon at the bottom of it. So we want to find that and get that in there. Let me use two hands. All right, so those two studs, you see, they fit inside this channel, and there's that's part of the suspension help holding this up, and that third one, so all three of them have to line up, and then you know you got it in. But now when I spin it, no drag, and you see we got our gap. Okay, so now we want to put it back together and test it again. Okay, now that we have it all with the 4 screws in it, let's get our battery here and see what she sounds like. Nice, sounds really good. Take the wire off, nice spin down. So that's good. I'm glad you got to see that, because you'll run into stuff like that and you'll have to make those adjustments. You might inadvertently change something, and then you just figure out what it is and put it back. So now let's reassemble everything, put the new control board in, and get this reinstalled into the customer's unit. All right, guys, so we've made it. This is the last step. You want to go ahead and connect your power wire and your blower wire before you put the board assembly in. It's in the back and you can't get to it. Remember, the heavier gauge wire is typically going to be the one for the motor. If you can't remember, you can just trace it directly to the motor. That's the one for the motor. Okay, so now we're just going to turn this guy around and just kind of feed it in and line up our holes. I wonder if it has a locator. They've done so well with that so far. No locator this time, but get it back to where the holes line up for the fastener, and that's going to be right there. Let's take that last screw. Shouldn't have any extras, and get that screwed down, and let's take it back to the customer's unit, get it reinstalled in the unit. Now make sure you haven't accidentally turned that off, or you're going to have an issue. You got to take this thing back off. Make sure it's in the reset position and not the off position, or it won't fire. Okay, and you can bench test this before you put it back in. You're hooking up your propane and your power and touching the two blue wires together, and makes your thermostat connection, and she'll fire right up.